We're here to make our Solidarity sunflower. In it, you're going to need, as we laid out in the instructions, some fabric. In this case, we've got a background fabric here. We picked this lovely blue. We have this pretty fabric for the center, and then I have two different yellows that I have pulled in to use for the petals here. And they'll show up pretty well for us. So we're going to start here. First step is to make a photocopy of our templates. There are 4 pages in the template. So in this case, I happen to use the Heat and Bond Featherlight. You can put it right through your printer, follow the instructions on the back. It makes life really easy when making these small applique projects. So in this case, I have already printed a copy here. As you can see, this is our center circle. I'm going to cut it out and give you the first example. And then we're going to follow suit with the rest of these. And I'll let you guys use your imaginations on how you put the rest together. But you can fuse several pieces at the same time without a problem. This one just happens to need one. So we're going to put this on here. I strongly suggest that you cut off a little piece here and see how long it takes to fuse on here. It doesn't take very long at all, as you can see. You're just going to set a warm, dry iron on it for just a couple of seconds, and it really means seconds. If you put it on too long, it won't fuse. The fusing comes back off again from the fabric. As you can see, that was really quick. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our applique scissors, like these here, because they're nice and sharp, and we can get kind of close up on the edges. And the blades are small, so you can see around them. And you're just going to trim around the edge, like so, for each of these pieces. So you're going to have one center piece here, this center circle, and you will have 16 of each of the 2 petal sizes. And we're going to get fusing those, and we'll be back shortly to show you how to, one, put these together as far as a unit, or a motif as we call it. And we'll show you how to put the motif together on the layout, and then how to put that motif onto the fabric itself. And then we'll show you how to quickly secure those with some decorative stitching. And in this case, I'm going to stitch and quilt at the same time on my domestic machine, which makes this project even faster. So, as you can see, here we have our lovely piece. The fusing, you want to make sure that this goes on the back side of your fabric. And you have your paper side out, and we'll show you how to remove the paper shortly. So come back in just a minute. As you can see, we have all of our pieces cut out here, and we will deal with those momentarily. I do love these. This is some, believe it or not, scrap material I had from a previous project. It's the Timeless Treasures Tropical. So the next step we have is putting together our template. Now, your template comes, as you can see, in several pages because, well, these sheets of paper are 8.5 by 11, and our template is 12 inches. So one of the first things we need to do is put the template together. So the easiest thing to do is first let's get rid of the end of the paper here because we don't need that. So we're going to cut along this kind of just outside this solid line here. Okay, so this is the bottom sheet. We'll get rid of that. And then we're going to get rid of the bottom sheet here. So these are our bottom 2 corners, and that's kind of how we'll start, because it'll be a little easier with the first 2 pieces here. So on your piece of paper, what you'll see is these 2 pieces fit together like this. Now, you'll see there's a little line, and this is the registration line between the 2. And that's where, that line is where they'll overlap. Well, as you can see, it's kind of hard to tell where to overlap. So the easiest thing I found is you cut off that line on one side and you get rid of it. And then you lay it on the second piece, okay? And you match up your lines here. So we're gonna match up that line, okay, with our line here. And then we take our handy dandy Scotch tape and we've matched our registration lines. We tape it back together again, okay? Now we have our longer piece. We're gonna do the same thing on this side. First, we're gonna get rid of all this excess that we don't need that's in the way. And then on this side, we're going to get rid of just this side of the registration mark. Again, I did it on the same side just to make it consistent. Okay, we're going to cut down this little line here and get rid of this extra piece of paper. So we're going to line those up. Okay. So we take these two pieces, and as you can see, we have multiple lines to line up here, which is great. The more lines you have to put together, the easier it makes it. And you're going to do your best to make them line up and look like they belong together. And then you're going to carefully tape them together. Now you don't have to tape them perfectly. You don't have to tape them all the way down, just so that they don't come apart. Okay, so I usually use 2 or 3 pieces just to get them to kind of sort of lay flat. Okay, so this is our next piece. Now the last piece is going to fit down here. This was our earlier piece. Since it's the smaller one, it's the one I'll trim up. Now you'll note I did turn the paper, and that's because I tend to trim so that I can see the side that I'm cutting on, because I'm right-handed. My scissors are on the right, so I want my piece that I need to see on the left. If you're a lefty, I do it the other way around. Ta-da! Get rid of that piece. And now we're going to tape this together here. And again, you're going to try and match up these lines as best you can. Okay, so these look pretty good here. And those are the important ones, so those are the ones we'll tape. And those look pretty good there. We'll tape those together. We have a little bit of a bump, not a humongous deal, given what we're using this for. Okay, there we go. So this is now what I call our layout template. All right, this is what we're going to use to figure out how to lay out our different pieces. Now, next step is very important. You will need something that you can see through for this next piece, because you're going to need to see through this to put this down. So I'm going to use here, this is a goddess sheet. I have several other types that I use here. One of the other ones that I have here is and it's a little bit smaller, that's why I didn't use it. You can use a silicone upload fuse mat. All of these work really, really well for this application. And what we do next is we lay out our pieces. Now, the easiest way to do this is first to take the our fusible off the back here. And so you can spend a few minutes, because now you've spent 20 minutes probably cutting these. There are 2 ways to cut these that are faster, and I'll give both of those options in the tutorial here. But as you can see, this is kind of difficult to peel these, right? It's a pain. So there are some simple things to do. One, just take a pin, and it makes a kind of indentation here. I just ran the pin over the edge, and it makes it crack and peel, which is kind of nice. Okay, so you can make your own crack and peels on these, which makes them much easier to do. Now, the other 2 ways I was mentioning are one, Sue Pelland makes something called Leaves and More, or Leaves Galore ruler. And that ruler will allow you to cut these, as she calls them, melons, very, very quickly, provided you know the right size. So I'll give a link to her information if you want to cut them that way. The other way that you can cut them very quickly and very easily is if you happen to have something like a Cricut, which I do have, in which case all you need are the SVG or image files, which I can provide as well. So Cricuts and Silhouettes both would cut these not necessarily faster, but a lot less work for you. So in here you can see I'm lining these up along every other one because these are the dark ones I'm putting, they're slightly larger, in the back. I'm just kind of cracking and peeling these as I go. Now I will show you how we're going to do this next piece because we'll do these in stages. Learning how to crack these with a pin was probably the best thing I ever learned when dealing with fusibles. Otherwise you fight with these quite a bit. Now you're going to lay these right here, like that. Now the reason I put down the silicone mat is that our sticky side is down now, and we don't want it to stick to our mat or to our paper. That's kind of not what we want. We want to stick to the fabric later. Whoops, wrong one. That one goes there. So this one looks like it needs to move over that way just a smidge. Okay. So we peel these off, start placing them around. And this is a pretty big motif, so it'll take you a few minutes to get everything laid out. You can do it in sections, which is what I'm about to show you, so that it's a little less painful because things won't move as much on you. So once you get a few of these kind of set, okay, you're going to take your iron and set it straight down on it. No moving, just straight down, and this will help start fusing them together. Okay, if you move them from side to side, you're moving your pieces. So you can fuse a little bit at a time so that you don't knock them with your hand and move them around. How do I know this? I've done it. Now this step, since we can't see the circle, we're going to have to really look carefully to make sure we're centered. And when I have such a thing, where I have to be so careful about being centered, I often will take a small ruler. So that's 2 inches, that's 2 inches, that's 2 inches, it's 2 inches. Okay, so those are 2.5 inches, and I picked the 4 coordinates here, so north, south, east, and west, so that they should be the same distance. Not bad for an eyeballing. Okay, so that's in our center. I'm going to fuse the center down. All right. Now comes the last big fusing step, which is putting this on our background fabric. So I'm going to slide this off and let it cool for a minute. If you let it cool, that's always helpful. And here we have our center fabric. Okay. And so we're going to need to make sure we have some idea of how this is the center. I have There are a couple of ways to do this. The easiest way I have found to make sure to do it is to press some lines into it that give us some markers as to where things go. To me, diagonal markers end up being a little more accurate than the north, south, east, west. Up to you. But I'm going to flatten that out as best I can. Now we're going to carefully peel this off. So sometimes it'll take a little bit of work to get this off. The first thing we're going to do is pull our template off the back. And you'll find sometimes that folding it away will help you get the first one to go. And then just carefully peel this guy. Carefully not to peel the pieces apart. So you want to catch the bottom ones first if you can. You can see once you get the first few off, the rest start to come off a little more easily. Sometimes you have to coax them a little. There we go. The sunflower has been peeled. Now, our big ones here are on the edges. Okay, so you want to line your big petals up here with your diagonal lines, like I did here. I'll lay this flat. And now, move this up a little so you can see better. We're going to just like we did earlier, flat down fuse. Just a couple of seconds is all it takes. To fuse it down. Okay. Now we can put our iron away and we'll go to our next step, which is at the sewing machine. And you could leave it as this. I like to stabilize them with stitching. Plus it provides a little decorative flair here. So on to our sewing machine. All right, we're back at the machine, and two things to start out. First, I have made a quilt sandwich here. I have put together a 12.5-inch square of backing fabric, 12.5-inch square of batting, and then this on top. And I've just done a quick basting stitch to kind of hold it all together to make my sandwich hold still. Now some people will say don't do that. It's a basting, it just keeps things from shifting, just like fusing keeps the fabric from shifting. So the second thing I've done is taken a look at my decorative stitches and decided what I want to use as far as outlining this lovely stitch here, these lovely petals here. Now, this is a typical blanket stitch or buttonhole stitch. It's a 2x2, which is how my machine sets it up. It's pretty, but I really, really, really like this particular stitch. Have no idea what it's called, but I do like to use it a lot for my applique work. And I usually set it at a 4x2, and I'm going to verify that right now. Always best to verify your stitches before you get started and make sure that they're going to look the way you think or want them to look. Okay, so we're going to start here. You want to first make sure you have your right foot on, you have your stitch picked, and then you're going to check your needle position. In this case, what you always want to make sure is that you're going to catch your fabric just on the inside, okay? But you always want to catch it on the inside of your fabric here. So I'm going to pull my needle up once, and I'm doing this for two reasons. One is so that I check my where that is, but 2 is to pull that thread through, the bobbin thread through, so that it doesn't get caught up in the back and look ugly, because this, we're stitching through both sets. So you're going to be able to see our lovely stitching in the back. So you want to be just as pretty in the back as it is in the front. And then you're going to slowly stitch. Now, stitch only as fast as you want. I'm going to get my center done first, as you'll see, and then we'll see how I can do the leaves. But this is kind of what we call quilt and go. So it saves a step. Quilt as you go. Get your quilting done at the same time as you get your applique secured. Now, if your foot's anything like mine, there's some guidance marks on here. You'll see that the inside line for me is where I'm catching my fabric. And that's where I'm lining up the fabric as I quote-unquote drive it or guide it through the machine here. Again, the most important thing is that you catch at least 2 or 3 threads on the inside fabric to hold it in place. Now, as you can see here, I've hit the end. I did go past this a couple of stitches, and the reason I did that was to give myself the ability to pull up that bobbin thread so that it doesn't cause a problem later. There we go. There's a bobbin thread. I think I got it all. Not quite. Oh, there. That's what was underneath. So, as you can see on our Quilt As You Go, we have already quilted part of this just by securing that center piece. Now, the trick with the Quilt As You Go is when you tie these off, you're going to tie knots in these, and you're going to bury these threads inside the quilt. So you don't want to come through either side, you're going to bury them in the batting. So typically it goes through just the batting. Now I use a large eye needle when I do this because I have the dual threads, and I don't want to spend most of my fun time fighting with threading a needle. And so as you can see here, we're going to put this down through here right near where we started, and I try to keep it in line with where my stitching has already gone. Whoops. Or someplace where it won't show too much coming out. Now this will look like it comes out, but you can see I did not go through the back, just through the inside. Pull it till you hear the knot or feel the knot pop through. And then you're going to cut it off right at the bottom there so you won't see it. Doesn't that look pretty? And it kind of gives a nice outline here. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to put this in fast forward mode, and we're going to do the same thing on each of these, okay? Now, what you'll note is we'll have to kind of backtrack a little bit to get through some of this. So we're going to see how some of that stitching goes, because we don't want to, one thing as a quilter is you try and minimize the number of times you go over something, and you try and plan it out ahead of time. So for us, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the lines through, and we're going to come down each one here. Okay, so you're going to follow each of the inside petals, and then when we come back up this next time, then we're going to follow these bigger outside petals, and you are going to double over on these smaller petals just at the tips, which is probably a good idea since that's the thing that's most likely to curl on you. But I'm going to put this in fast forward mode, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, as you can see, we have now got our completed fusing done. Everything has been appliqued and secured down. When you watch the speed version here, you may have seen me go through, and every so often there are little threads that pop up along the edge here, and feel free to go in and just trim those so they don't pull further, unless of course you want a scrappy look, in which case leave them as they are. What I'm going to do next is a little bit of quilting here, just to kind of secure things a little more heart here, which if done right maybe takes up a quarter of my stitching area here. So then I use a handy dandy piece of chalk to trace it, and this way if I don't like it I can always just remove it. So I'm going to put 4 little hearts there, and then probably what I'm going to do over here is a similar thing, except to accentuate, I'm going to go this way. I'll put my little hearts in here. I'm trying to keep them enough away from the edge so that they don't get caught in where my So again, we want to pull the thread up so that we don't catch it, because again this is going to get seen. We're going to go back to a straight stitch for this. I'm using an open toe kind of foot here so I can see where I'm going, which to me is kind of important in this step. And just go slowly, you know, there's no need to go quickly. You want to work at your own speed. Pivot as you need to. Okay, and that gave us a lovely center here. Now I'm going to come through and quilt down one more time here, and I'm going to kind of echo inside here. There we go. Now I'm done with what I'm going to do here. Now my trick for removing the chalk here is that I use a simple scrubby. You know, when this one happens to be made with a coconut shell, and you just kind of do a little scrub, and for the most part, your chalk is gone. The rest wears off as you work with it, but you can see it's one of the reasons I like the chalk. Don't have to worry about it staining the fabric, and it does come out quite easily. So I'm going to do the rest of this on my own here, and I'll get back with you guys and show you the final product.